Okay, to discuss this further, I'm joined now by political strategist Fred Hicks. Fred, great to have you here with us on TRT World. Certainly a lot to unpack here. Let's start with President Joe Biden. Things are not going well for Joe Biden, are they? For example, a few weeks ago, he gave a disastrous performance at a debate with Donald Trump, which prompted many Democrats to ask him to step down. And now he has contracted COVID-19.
So there definitely it's been a rough stretch for the last, say, about month or so for President Biden. But with that being said, the polls remain pretty much unchanged. He and former President Donald Trump were basically in a statistical tie going into the debate. And after early fluctuations post-debate, right before last weekend, they were still in a tie with not, and when you look at national polling data. So it's going to be interesting to see if former President Trump enjoys what we call a post-convention bump, which usually is 2 to 3 points after a convention. We see this both with the Republican and the Democratic side. But at this stage in the game, President Biden and the Democrats would love to be ahead rather than in a tie, but things are pretty much, interestingly enough, remain unchanged despite the events of the last month or so.
But see, it seems to me calls for Biden to step down, they are not stopping. For example, according to reports on Saturday, Adam Schiff, who is someone with a lot of political experience, a renowned figure within the Democrats, he asked Biden to step down as well. So how likely do you think is it for Biden to step down at this point, given the current circumstances, given the latest developments?
Well, the president has said he's not going to step down, so I have to take him at his word with that. And, to our viewers, I think it's important to understand that this election is very, very important this year here in the U.S. You have the presidency at stake, but Democrats have a very slim 1 to 2 vote majority in the U.S. Senate, and that's at stake. And Republicans have about a 4 to 5 vote majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, and that's also at stake. So really the control of the entire U.S. government in terms of by political party is on the line in this election. And that's why you're seeing Democrats call for President Biden to step down, because even though he's in a statistical tie with former President Trump, given the legislative successes of the last 3 years, Democrats feel that President Biden should be further ahead. And they are concerned about not just the presidency, but the House and the U.S. Senate.
Right. And Fred, before I let you go, a quick question about J.D. Vance. We are expecting him to speak at the Republican National Convention in a few hours from now. I wonder, what do you think him being the vice presidential mate for Donald Trump means for President Donald Trump's election campaign?
So Senator Vance is a very interesting person. He came to fame, so to speak, here in the U.S. as really an anti-Trumper in 2016. He spoke out against Donald Trump. He said he thought that Donald Trump was America's Hitler. And so to see him go from that just 8 years ago to being the vice presidential nominee is very interesting. But in that in-between time, he moved from that one position to being one of the most ardent defenders of former President Trump, and stated that he himself, if he were vice president, or implied if he were vice president, he would have voted and moved and done everything he could to not certify our election in 2020. And so for Democrats, he's actually an interesting figure because he has called for a national ban on abortion, and he's been anti a lot of things that Democrats stand for. And so Democrats have been really excited about this pick, but there's also a recognition that at 39 years of age, if Donald Trump wins, the future seems really endless for J.D. Vance, and he would be next in line in 2028 and beyond, because even in just 4 years from now, he'll only be 43 years of age. So while there's a lot to work with in terms of campaigning and attacking someone, he also represents a very, and I shouldn't use the word dangerous, we try to move away from that after last weekend's incident, but J.D. Vance represents a more conservative wing of the party than even Donald Trump does, and his selection is a nod to that wing and to their future beyond 2024. And Democrats need to pay attention, and they need to work really diligently if they want to not just win this year, but protect the progressive gains that they've made over the last few years at the ballot box, including pushing back against the anti-abortion movement and in terms of protecting health care.
Now, Fred, let me add one more question here. Yesterday at the Republican National Convention, the Republicans were focusing on immigration, certainly a contentious issue when it comes to American politics. And today, foreign policy is taking center stage at the Republican National Convention. I wonder, how do you think Donald Trump is going to change America's foreign policy if he is reelected?
So that's a great question. JD Vance, the person we were just speaking about, the vice presidential nominee, is on the record as being very much against aid to Ukraine. And so if Donald Trump and JD Vance win, I think that has a lot to do, what was severely impact what we see happen in European and, of course, Middle Eastern politics. Also, we know from President Trump's former term, his first term, that he was very isolationist and he increased taxes on imports, particularly targeting China. And he's indicated that he would do that again. And that has played a significant role in the inflation and the prices that Americans are experiencing right now. So I think this is an election that has serious implications, not just for US, but for our global partners. Remember, when President Trump was elected the first time, one of the first actions he took was instituting a ban on travelers from Muslim countries. And so he has not really modified that position over the last 4 years. So I think you talk about the impact on Ukraine, with both he and JD Vance being very much against aid to Ukraine. You know that he has a track record of being anti Chinese trade and increasing tariffs that have a direct impact on the U.S. economy. And then also when you look at their immigration policies, I think that this is something that is going to have a lot of ripple effects across the global stage if he and JD Vance win in November.
Fred Hicks, thanks very much for talking to us here on TRT World. I really appreciate your taking out the time.